Hello everybody, MegaZardX here, back at it again to give you another very exciting video. And for today, I just want to go through and talk about, yes, we already know that there is the confirmation that Nintendo already came out and said, hey, the Nintendo Switch 2 is going to be a real thing. We know it's supposed to be announced sometime within this fiscal year, so March of 2025. We should pretty much have almost a lot more details than what we have in an official reveal, like maybe that Nintendo Switch trailer we managed to have in the fall time of, like, what was it, 2016, and the lead up to March 2017. So yeah, we already know that the Switch 2 is officially in the works. Nintendo has officially came out and said that. But with that confirmation comes a whole bunch of rumors and stuff like that. And lately, word on the street is Nintendo gonna be doing backwards compatibility? Or are we gonna get some weird old things where we get like Switch 2 versions of stuff? Like maybe it's like an enhanced port or enhanced versions, like, you know, how like the PlayStation manages to do it with some of their titles and stuff like that though. So that kind of brings into question, are we gonna have true backwards compatibility, or are we gonna get upgrades and Nintendo just basically saying, hey, here's the Switch 2 version, buy this, and you know what, you don't even worry about the regular version though. So in today's video, I'm just going to go through all of those different talks and stuff like that though, and kind of give you my little spill on, you know, where I basically stand in terms of, are we going to get backwards compatibility, how our future upgrades are going to go, because with this increase in power for the Nintendo Switch 2, I imagine we're going to get some enhanced versions of some previous iteration games that managed to drop on the Nintendo Switch though. So if you really like this video, make sure you're going to hit that like button, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and that bell to stay up to date on all things video game related I feel like talking about and discussing. But without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump straight up into this video. So with the confirmation that Nintendo came out in a statement saying, yes, the Nintendo Switch successor is going to be on the distant horizon and it's going to be fully revealed within this upcoming fiscal year. So obviously March of 2025 is going to be the latest. So we're going to get some of this extra bit of juicy details on it though. Obviously, in terms of the rumor mills, that just opens up the floodgates really wide. And one rumor person in particular, known as Midori, she's a very well credited leaker in terms of information that usually comes from like Sega Atlas. I think that's her general specialty though, but she does have a little bit of information on Nintendo. So I usually, you know, listen to her very well in terms of any statement she happens to put out here on her account though. But in a few tweets here, she did manage to say that there's a project at Nintendo with the codename U-King-O, and it might be related to the rumors of the next console codename. And in a follow-up tweet, she manages to say that U-King was originally the codename for Breath of the Wild, and Nintendo uses suffixes for ports of their previous titles. So C for the 3DS, as well as S for Switch ports though, but there is no O before. So, you know, looking at this code name that she knows about, U-King-O, you would think that, as she says, the rumored next Nintendo hardware code name is Ounce. So here, just looking at that new code name for U-King-O, it does seem like there might be some kind of a upgrade, some kind of advancement, an individual SKU for Breath of the Wild right here. Now, obviously, whenever you look at this, it does kind of make sense why this might be a thing kind of cooking on in the background though, because if you can remember, there were some rumored reports at Gamescom last year that Nintendo was kind of showing behind some closed doors of like an enhanced version of Breath of the Wild running on some kind of similar architecture that would be equivalent of what would have been running on a Nintendo Switch 2 at that point though. So if you kind of take, you know, some of the information we kind of known about from last year and then apply it to some of the information that's kind of, you know, rumored leaking out right now, you can kind of put two and two together to kind of think and paint a picture that yes, it seems like Nintendo's very interested in doing like enhanced versions of some previous Switch games. And, you know, with Breath of the Wild, I do think that that would be like a key title for Nintendo to kind of show out, particularly maybe on day one, whenever the Nintendo Switch 2 happens to launch out, whether that be like early springtime, midsummer, whenever they decide to drop that Nintendo Switch 2. And that would be a key title where they can say, hey, look, you remember how this game looked on the Nintendo Switch? Well, here's how it looks now on the Nintendo Switch 2, which is obviously going to be a little bit more powerful and stuff. We heard some rumors and some of the little bit of specs here and there, like where the performance could be for this next new console. And we're basically kind of putting it in the ballpark, or like it's a little higher than the PS4 Pro, but maybe slightly a little bit less or almost on the same level as like an Xbox Series S. So it's just going to be like a half step behind where we're kind of at within the current gen consoles though. So not necessarily bad in terms of power, but then obviously we know it's probably going to be using some things such as DLSS and, trying to do some artificial upscaling and stuff. So that's how you'll manage to get up to the 4K. It wouldn't be probably running natively on the system, but through artificial means, it basically just jumps it up there, just doing a couple little shortcuts here and there though. But, all that to say is, and putting all this rumor mill information for what we just got from Midori and then applying it to some of the information we kind of gotten from past rumors from last year, that brings into question, well, what is Nintendo's strategy for backwards compatibility? Because if you're hearing in these reports how we got a specialized version for Breath of the Wild that has more enhancements, it probably is going to improve the frame rates because running through some of the areas in Breath of the Wild, it's not necessarily like the greatest in terms of frame rate. You're going to have like some dips and stuff like that. I think especially around the Faron Woods area, so you're going to get a little bit of frame rate issues and stuff like that. So the big question is how they're going to handle this. Now obviously if you look to the competition, PlayStation manages to sometimes give you those upgraded versions for, sometimes it will be like a $10 upgrade. Sometimes you might get stuff for free. Most of the times they manage to do the $10 upgrade fee though. So the real question is, we haven't really seen Nintendo actually, do anything like this though. So what would be their strategy in terms of handling it? So obviously, number one, I say they could do the $10 upgrade fee. That way they can just kind of recoup some of that extra development time and cost that it took to manage to make this version a little bit stronger though. Or they could just give it to you for free. Who's to say though? But obviously, this is Furukawa as the captain of the kit for the Nintendo Switch 2 though. So I know he's a businessman though, so it would not surprise me at all for him to say, hey, if you want this, better version of Breath of the Wild, hey, you got to pony up that $10 though. Now that could bring in the question, well, are we going to get enhancements for every single Nintendo Switch game, first party wise, maybe some stuff third party wise here and there though? The answer to that, I will highly say no. I do not think, honestly, that they will manage to go through and just give out $10 upgrades for every single game. That'll get a little bit annoying. I feel like you kind of rub your fan base off, the wrong way. And then certain other games like Luigi's Mansion 3, that might be one of those games that's like, hey, it still looks pretty good. Maybe naturally what the Switch 2 can naturally do, hey, it might just run the game just, fairly smooth, fairly fine, and there's not a lot you need to go around and tinker around with that kind of game though. So yeah, I do think that whatever they're doing with the Breath of the Wild, I think they're going to do for certain select titles. It'll probably be like games like Breath of the Wild, maybe a little later, Tears of the Kingdom, maybe they'll get in there and do something with Mario Odyssey. It's those big and major hitters that manage to stay in the top 10 at any given point within the Nintendo Switch's lifetime in terms of the millions of sales that they managed to get for those games though. So that's why I think their strategy is going to be upon that though. So overall, I do believe that the Nintendo Switch will still be backwards compatible with every single game. So even with a game like Breath of the Wild, I still do believe that you'll be able to take your old cartridge from Nintendo Switch, stick it up into your Nintendo Switch 2, and it should still run the game fine. It might run it just a little bit better than what your OG Switch model might have been able to do though, but it might not be as great or might get up to that 4K capability and stuff like that for what will be the Switch 2 version of that game will be if you manage to do the $10 upgrade, if that makes sense. Because PlayStation managed to do this as well for titles such as like The Last of Us 2 remaster, where yes, you could be able to stick that same copy of the game, that PS4 disc, into your PS5 and it will still work fine though. However, if you did want to pay that extra $10, you could upgrade it. So I think even in a world with backwards compatibility for the Nintendo Switch port, so even in a world with backwards compatibility for the Nintendo Switch 2, for Nintendo Switch titles, you can still have those games still work, on your console, your shiny new console, and still have enhanced versions of it where people are able to purchase it, whether they're the slight little upgrades or they could just be a full-blown remaster or anything. I don't expect Nintendo to go through and do like just a straight up, just an overall remaster of certain games. I think the Breath of the Wild thing might be maybe the closest thing, and maybe that'll be a similar case like how Spider-Man PS4 and then Spider-Man Remastered for the PS5. Maybe it's like a similar thing like that, just to kind of show off the general consumer base and saying, hey, this is how much better that the Switch 2 runs games in comparison to the Switch. So you might have a few oddballs that might necessarily do that though, but I don't think that's going to be a case for almost every single game that Nintendo having to drop out first party on the Nintendo Switch though. And then even looking back at the history of Nintendo consoles as well, like Game Boy Color, were were supported on the Game Boy Advance. The Game Boy Advance was supported on the DS. The DS was supported on the 3DS and stuff. And then you even saw GameCube to Wii. You even saw Wii to Wii U. So Nintendo has been known to have backward compatible games that work on the next generation console, whereas obviously from the Wii U to the Switch, that couldn't necessarily be the case because you're going from a disc format to a cartridge format, so that just couldn't work, period, though. And then we also know that Nintendo has been saying in every one of their shareholder meetings that, hey, we, set up the Nintendo account so that way we can carry on this information from Nintendo Switch Online to all your stuff, that like your digital purchases and stuff, so they can roll over to the next system, though. And I wouldn't think they'll be working that hard on those Nintendo accounts if they weren't going to have some way to kind of have your library still kind of roll on over to the next console with all your information and stuff up on there, though. It just kind of makes sense from a business point perspective right there, though. But yeah, that's basically all the information I wanted to showcase off to y'all in terms of some of the rumor mill stuff we managed to get and what that kind of basically paints for the broader picture of, is backwards compatibility going to be a thing for the Nintendo Switch? So that was a lot to unpack, at least from the possibility of whether or not we're going to get backwards compatible games for the Nintendo Switch 2. Obviously, nothing is 100% confirmed. Nothing is, just firmly planted within the concrete as of now, though. But, just knowing Nintendo's track record and their history, it would be, oh my goodness, it would be some kind of a crazy, I would say, honestly, it would be a mistake for the next system not to be backwards compatible, because of the fact that you still want to go ahead and support the Nintendo Switch console for the next couple of years, while you kind of have this hybrid year of you having Switch 2 and Switch titles and stuff like that. You can continue to sell Switch titles and stuff. And then obviously you're going to have some third-party companies that are going to say, hey, I want to sell to that, that solid base of consumers that will be closer around the PS2 numbers. It might be getting close to around 150-ish million to almost kind of rival what the PS2 managed to sell throughout its whole entire life. It would not be a smart move, at least in my mind, for them not to make the Switch 2 backwards compatible with all the Switch games that you're able to play on that system, though. But y'all gotta let me know down in the comment section down below what all that you think about this information, this leaked information from Midori as well, in terms of these rumored code names for Breath of the Wild happen to be one of those first few games we know of that might have a possible enhanced port or an enhanced version, or maybe it's an upgrade. Who's to say on all of that, though? But it seems like Breath of the Wild is definitely cooking with something. It kind of goes hand in hand with that Gamescom information we managed to get from last year, though. But that's basically going to do it in terms of this video, though. So if you really like this, make sure you go and hit that like button, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and that bell to stay up to date on all things video game related I feel like talking about and discussing. So remember, y'all, until our video I make next, see y'all.